Apamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at apamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Aloha, everybody. I just want to start by saying a huge mahalo nui loa to Flint for being my teacher, my spiritual companion, and my Dharma brother. What you see today, my being at this point in life in this way, it's in direct relationship to engagement with him, with Appamada, and all of you, actually. So also, I want to offer very specific thanks to all of you for being here today and for how you've held and appreciated me. I'm speculating that most everyone had multiple abortive attempts at notes, but now that I'm sitting here and after working through the process, the only thing which remains a complete mystery now is if I get to put anyone to sleep. But thanks to the miracle of two-dimensional Zoom, you can't see the sweat running down my back right now. So I think I'm ready to get into this thing. We were from the very beginning steeped consciously and unconsciously in a world of duality. Survival, both trivial and significant, required learning about how to navigate external and internal perceptions and preferences. Life, for me, required a search for or development of perspectives and self-worth to stay alive in this country in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Fortunately, my mom was that nurturing and loving aspect of our world. And she presented the yang in our life. My father was, for the most part, the yin. And nothing like a little mixed up classical principles to get you started on the path. But our father was a functioning alcoholic who held a job through retirement. He was also a womanizer and quite violent when drunk, but innocently and as a matter of maybe unrecognized grace. We learned a lot of what not to be as a man and how to be a person of integrity and morality and service to self and others. Another fortunate experience is that with the urgings of me and my two brothers, my mom divorced our dad. And for this, I thank them both, and later learned that my expectation of our father to be something other than what he had the experience and background to be wasn't really a fair burden or a hate to saddle him with. It actually, and in looking back at these things, it actually reminds me of one of the aspects of Thich Nhat Hanh's poem titled "Call Me by My True Names," and in particular, I'm thinking of the pirate stanza, where the lines go, "I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving." The lesson learned over time here regarding my father was that if all you know is pirating, the judgment, the expectations, or demands for you to be, say, a neurosurgeon should be appropriately tempered. But it wasn't all doom and gloom being in a world of duality, as we did find for ourselves ways to be in peace and joy, kind of like a middle way, though we didn't know it as such at the time. And looking back and needing to put labels or definitions to some things in the past, I see we actually had the reality of living in a multiverse, not just duality, because you had to know ways to behave in a wrong use of power society that victimized you, requiring your being subservient, invisible, or an unrecognized contributor for the wealth and entertainment of others. While in a brown-skinned sociological environment, what was important was being a trusted family member, being tough, being sensitive and helpful, Priorities were placed on strong Sangha-like bonds, and assisting with needs was what Ohana or family does and did, though in the day we just called it just being folks. But I'm going to not get us too locked into the sociological tightrope of a living practice in a divided world of delusion. That focus is a bit hard to encapsulate in 30 or 40 minutes. So I'll just say that life as it is offers so much, even when you don't have the formality of training or study or philosophies. So in a way, there was always way seeking, and you were by design or necessity on a path. And I'd like to say it started in a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago, but it was actually Asbury Park, New Jersey, in the middle of the last century, where normal was Sunday mornings getting into your church clothes with clip-on ties, Clark Kent hats, and shoes. This I remember so well. Shoes that were polished so bright you probably needed sunglasses at 10 p.m. And just as an aside, in case somebody asks, if somebody already did, there is indisputable proof of a divine power, because I don't believe there are any pictures of me at this stage of my life. uh, but so we were raised Episcopalian, which was a poor man's Catholic. And there was just enough ceremony and ritual to hold my interest with a sense of mystery. I love the smell of incense and develop a curiosity for Latin words, which nowadays is translated into a fond attraction to chanting in Japanese whenever possible. So thank you, Flint. I start here kind of because this is the place where I first became conscious of that internal spiritual magnet. There was something seeking true north in my life. Sitting in the pew, I had such marvelous and private feelings of divinity, though they were honestly not named such and not too deeply examined at that time. I was content with feeling like I was filled with helium and just feeling downright joyful inside. I could look around and see a few others that seemed to be sharing something like I was, but in those days I was way too shy to ask an adult, and you also didn't just approach an adult and start wanting to talk about God, the Trinity, and such. I might have gotten locked up for that one. My mom initially thought that I would follow in her father's footsteps and be a Baptist minister. And the thought really wasn't initially objectionable, though it did seem to carry a really heavy burden. Anyway, I stayed content with my Sunday reveries, read the Bible, joined the choir, and went to Sunday school. And here's where I got a deep lesson in faith, and the wheels started to loosen in preparation for eventually coming off. But in Sunday school, I was having some deep conflicts, so much so that I was knotted up physically trying to understand and reconcile with the 10-year-old mind about God the Father, Jesus, the only begotten Son, though part of a God, not a God, and the Holy Spirit, who they never really explained what he did for a day gig, and that bothered me. And how they were separate yet one. I kept asking questions till one day one of the friars yelled at me to shut up and just take it on faith. Oh, yeah, see, as you might imagine, that was followed by the sound of wagon wheels falling to the ground. However, I did shut up, realizing that one can't give answers to others they don't have for themselves. And I started to see that there were quite a few people who just parroted words, made the gestures, and then lived their lives however they wanted. There were clergy having affairs and people cheating with collection money, gossiping about everything and everyone. In other words, just being humans. I felt there should be something else, something more, and quite honestly, I wanted it. And I kind of hold that awakening as an intro to personal accountability. it kind of created for me a little backdoor conspiracy, which was fertile soil for me to start learning and consciously searching while allowing everything to be fair game. Looking back now, I can pretty safely say that everything about life became a practice edge, though I didn't have those terms, and I was starving for spiritual and intellectual sustenance. I came to a point of realization, which I later imaged with this particular picture. And Marla, the quote from Mahatma Gandhi, "God has no religion," was so profound in my life. Yet there was a subtlety underneath it, hence why hopefully you can see the picture well enough, which has that face of a Buddha subtly there but profoundly present. And that was significant. Thanks, Marley. So now for me, the itch was firmly established. And I'll take a little bit of a long-winded aside here, but this at this point, thinking back about way seeking or walking a path didn't quite seem to be an adequate definition for what was lived. And I'm probably going to fumble around here for words to try and make it be tangible and relatable, so apologies in advance. But in conversing with a very dear friend about this talk, I expressed that I believe that I started my way seeking with something already found. This blessing from the outset was something inside that graced my life in mind and heart. There was something inside of me that I can't take credit for that was more me and maybe and more than me, more accurately. I say I was graced as I look at it now, because the classical definition of grace, meaning unmerited favor, is what I lived, and what quite honestly brings tears to my eyes, and tears of thanks. Um, this unnamed thing or presence, I felt I had something that supported me, guided, maintained me, and at times, fortunately, regulated me with a conscience. Um, it is a part of the explanation of me as I am with myself and others. I know that a consequence of being on a spiritual path is recognizing alternatives, being grateful for all the sources of love, and here I give a huge nod to my mom, and growing that container to hold all things in life. That grace which held and regulated and motivated me was the guide to not take certain paths. And in life, I witnessed more than enough violence and negativity. Um, and hopefully I don't trigger anybody here, but I even twice in my life wanted to kill another human being. And for all honesty, one of them was my father. Yet there was almost a feeling of having little to no option but to pay attention to the ways of my better angels to live life and learn. That unnamed thing fortunately held me and guided me into a direction that did not result in any taking of human life or any life. Um, and in line with that, I was blessed with the love and care of my mother, who also knew that holding us in grace would be the thing that was needed to walk a more upright life and be receptive to what the divine exposed us to through art, music, creativity. And she was the care of a person who was a balance to most of the nonsense in the world. I say, and I said to my friend, that it's still kind of a mystery or a surprise for me when receiving appreciation for just being and living or sharing as the conduit that this unnamed source was shaping in me. Fortunately, I paid attention and engaged, and sometimes just lucked out that the positives kept me primed and presented counters to the negatives, which always seem to be available. Back to the story. Like many other brown skinned persons at the time, I thrived in a multiverse. I had imperatives to learn and explore and survive on multiple levels, and lived life where it involved not getting caught being too intellectual in some environments. yet also being a semi-belligerent badass on a street corner when desired. Um, and there might be a picture of that, who knows? But you guys will never see it. Count on that. I don't remember who said the phrase recently, but I wrote it down as it was a great caption for what life in America in the 50s and 60s and early 70s was like. The phrase says, suffering begets a special wealth. Yeah, suffering begets a special wealth. That really sat with me. And yeah, I took a look and was thinking that my suffering was medicated and tended to with poetry, philosophy, novels, science fiction, music, ancient text, and conversation with a very select few people. There were poets like A.R. Ammons, E.E. Cummings, Langston Hughes, Walt Whitman, Leroy Jones, novelists like Baldwin and Hesse, Kafka, Rilke, Butler, Morrison, Hansberry, Walker, Merton, Neruda, and Iyengar, and so many more. I could probably take the next 30 minutes just naming authors. And there was music. You know, what a marvelous wide open time to have music get into your blood and inform you of emotions, perspectives, beauty, and surprises. I spanned the gamut with music from gamelan bells to Jimi Hendrix. And fortunately, it all pointed to real life and practice. I found being on the path presented valid and equal lessons from the Bhagavad Gita or Castles Made of Sand by Jimi Hendrix. My mom, and I'm getting a little emotional here to keep thinking about my mom. She gifted us with a very deep exposure to classical music, and she could play a serious piano. But in her day, and she was born in the beginning of the 20th century, there was no entree for a black Southern girl to be a classical pianist. So she became a teacher and shared her love with her sons. My father, fortunately, was into gospel, blues, and jazz. So we had unparalleled heart and mind opening experiences from all of those mediums. And the icing on the cake was having a transistor radio. Hopefully, everybody here remembers those. So you got invigorated or maybe perverted by rock and roll. So through music and literature, we lived a less restricted life in some respects. It still had to walk the tightrope of racism and violence in America. Um, in other words, we got constant lessons in duality and preferences. Thanks, life. Um, but that unnamed but ever-present source throughout it all was building a container for the itch that still begged for scratching. Things like TM and yoga entered my life and made a significant impact. There was a brief reaching back into Christianity with Frederick Casey Price, and I kept the Gita on my nightstand and opened it often. And bless his heart, my younger brother shared with me his learnings from his searching. Things like The Open Secret by Tony Parsons. And, this has been part of a priceless lifelong sharing between brothers. So, in short, I guess I'm trying to say that the search, the path, was just how we lived. I do, and now I get to laugh at myself. I do remember spending time with the assumption or belief that I could attain enlightenment as a one and done sort of existence with absolutely no suffering, never another challenging moment, and able to be above being merely human. And then I would be the best me and of best benefit to others. Um, as an excuse for that, I like to think I was somewhat charming in my naivete, but fortunately, more learning, more searching, and a couple of horrendous mistakes helped to mature me out of that fantasy. Um, And I did live with frustrations, angers, confusions, doubts, and answers which were sometimes really just distractions or excuses. But again, that internal grace was with me and in me, moving me forward and somehow keeping me from the worst of possible consequences from my actions or actions of others. The other aspect of living the search, which has proven to be probably the most significant, is the gift of creativity. I started writing in grammar school, and yes, I was awful. And in high school, switched from short stories to poetry. Ended up being the editor of the Creative Writing magazine for 3 years. But in college, had the life-altering epiphany of being handed a camera. And here's just another little aside, probably. I literally had a light bulb come on for me the first time I looked through the viewfinder of a camera. It took my breath away, and I knew this was for me, and I knew this was me. I was interviewed once in Black and White magazine. It's a photography magazine, and the writer asked me about how I got started. And feel free to laugh at this. I told the writer as a child, I used to take my thumb and forefingers, put them together, and I would go around looking at the world like that. Everything seemed just more normal to look through my fingers like that. It just seemed a natural way to engage with the world. And because I was painfully skinny, had thick glasses, I kind of had the disguise of a nerd, so nobody thought anything peculiar about my little activities with my fingers. But once I got to see through the viewfinder, it was boom. I knew with absolute certainty this is what I had been practicing for with my little finger looking. And this is what I wanted to do all the time going forward. And true confessions, I did become a bit of a pest for some folks by borrowing cameras and not giving them back on time. Apologies. Till I saved enough to buy my own camera. And for me, it was like being blind and then having sight. I just couldn't get enough. I got books on optics, chemistry, film processing, the mechanics of cameras and lenses, the rules of photography, the history of photography, and the ways that rules might be broken. I was a sponge, and it all made sense immediately. It also made large again inside me that spiritual connection or fullness from the early church days. At the time, I was a psychology major who was shy enough to want to observe everything and still not be seen. I also fancied myself a budding artist. Um, I actually bought a beret at one point. God help me. Yeah. Um, but as an adult, I still felt compelled to work a non-artistic job um, because of established standards for success and ways to be accepted in a white corporate world. Um, my older brother had severe trauma from my father, and he got a pass on towing the mark for the most part. My younger brother was incredibly gifted, dropped out of high school with my full endorsement behind our mother's back, and it paid off hugely for him. And I was left to fit into the mold of being proper, the good son, and showing how to surmount the challenges thrown at brown skinned people all the time. Um, so I was kind of the normalized family mascot. But thankfully, through all those challenges and extra efforts, I never felt abandoned or hopeless. I was tired as hell a lot, but sometimes, but I don't know. There was always imaging and writing. So that was a sometimes, actually, probably an all-time support through all of those days and years. And that's just to say that, life continued. There was more duality. There was more multiverse. Those things just go on and on. I did rather well by all the measurable standards, but had to make the creative aspects of my life become part-time. But I never let them go because I knew that being on that path required engagement. And that's engagement with the gifts given and the awareness that comes from practice. So life rolled on. I got better at photography, and it took on more and more of the aspects of spirituality and awareness and relationship. I did well with a side gig of a wedding photographer on the mainland, and I'll probably never shoot another wedding in my life. But I also kept honoring the fine art aspects as my deepest love. Um, Corporately, I had a huge office, a personal secretary, an amazing staff, and an Amex card that I didn't have to pay. Uh, I had the discovery of being very good at doing something versus doing something you loved doing. So, what else? More duality. I had the experience of two marriages and two divorces. And when I moved out here to Hawaii, most everything seemed ripe for making a fuller focus on imaging and spirituality. Time to do what I loved doing versus what I was good at doing. This was about the time when scratching the itch on the path was maturing into discovery and integrating the Zen, the Buddhism, into all aspects of my life all the time now. I like to hold the perspective that so many of the foundational ingredients were in place, and engaging with Flint that first time was like having a pocket full of data be molded into information that was a cipher to a riddle. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you, Flint. Um, and this is when my life took on the indelible reality of the words expressed by Alan Watts in this next image. And it was very real for me what Alan Watts said when he said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." That was an epiphany which I barely have words to say. And it's something that I think I live through my words and my imaging. And I think it's a great honor to be that conduit for the universe to look at and explore itself. Um, so the search, and probably more importantly, the practice, it's led me to living and sitting with and examining thoughts like there is no such thing as a creative mind. The mind is not the source of creativity. It's a tool for translating expression from the source into observable terms for the senses, which is how, with gratitude, we make a covenant with all that's observed and lived. And being a conduit for that pervasive unknown source is what my life has come to be, thankfully and gratefully. Um, but I can't ignore full disclosure. For some odd reason, I'm not perfect yet. Um, I feel, yeah, you're not supposed to laugh at that one, but anyway, um, I feel that life sometimes is like a line from a Thomas Dolby song that's titled "Why People Fall in Love," and he said, "Albert Einstein nailed space time, but the wild thing had him stumped. Al, baby, 2 and 2 make 5 1/4. That's why people fall in love." So that's a best an explanation of life as you might come up with in a song. Still, I can say that that search and being on the path has happily brought me to a place where my life is rooted, grounded, and nourished with gratitude for being a channel, a conduit to share the essence of creation. The oneness reminds me that I'm in relationship with everything. And the duality reminds me that with the eyes open, again, a dream begins. And all of it's really quite marvelous, sometimes scary, and sometimes downright unknowable. Um, but that's one of the wonderful things that we get through Zen and our Buddhism is that there's a place for the unknowable, and part of life is accepting that. Um, and the way seeking's brought me to the cushion, and it securely lifts me off the cushion. It's made a priority to honor the gifts bestowed upon me and to be of service by sharing. I read that art makes the world more inspirational, and that is one of the major goals of sharing, to inspire and inform. hopefully resulting in appreciation, joy, and gratitude. And I say it this way, that channeling the divine is as good as it gets for me. And I've never experienced any greater high than when I can say thank you. So the bottom line is that a way-seeking mind has allowed me the grace to remain comfortably overwhelmed with blessings. And that's what I have to say. Thank you. I want to be able to make an offering to open it up, that if there's questions or anything, comments, whatever, please feel free. Now is the time. Looks like Joel has his hand up.
I've been, I also had the opportunity to interact with Ed pretty regularly. He's a member of one of Appamada's councils. The council made up mostly of people who are not in Austin, who are representing the whole online community of people connecting with Appamada. And I'm so glad to know more about some things that I've heard you mention very briefly in Council 5 and so on. And to it's just so moving to me to hear how you have, from the very start, from the pain and the joy of your upbringing, brought a unifying vision to your search, to your approach to other people, to the discovery of the value in your life and in the way, I forget how you said it, but it was that your mind is not creative. You're just recognizing the innate creativity of the world. And I'm sorry if I messed up the beautiful way you said that, but may I have your permission, Ed, to share the website where at least some of your images are available later on after this, or
Sure. Yeah. There's a website, and I'm also on Instagram, which is where I do most of my regular posting. But yes, I appreciate that, and by all means, Joel, yes, thank you.
well, again, deep thanks.
Okay. Well, Ed, I just want to tell you how deeply touched I was by your talk. It was so authentic and helping us to learn. And the dualism that we experience is something that we have got to own up to and try to get more expansive of. And what I'm going to talk about is going to sound so clinical, and maybe that's to keep me out of my emotions, but my study of Joanna Macy has really helped me identify how I can get to oneness in the world. And it's looking at systems theory and how things work on our planet. And one of the things we've seen is that we have a self-organizing planet. That's it, and it goes towards complexity. And I just see your story as such a beautiful example of self-organization, that you had these two forces in your life as your parents, and you could turn toward one or the other, or feel focus on the pain of one, but that you grew with love and was able to let all the cruelty and hurt flow on by and become the beautiful person you are. And it's just such an example of our life on this earth moving toward a positive way. And it's just deeply touching to me. And thank you so much for sharing that positivity with us.
Thank you for your appreciation and your very, very kind words. And I can't take all the credit for this, but
We can't.
it's kind of, yeah, it's like imaging. Someone will say, I made this incredible image. And I do have to say that nature does the heavy lifting. Nature presents things for me, and I am graced with the opportunity to witness it and the skills to be able to use a particular tool, either a pen and paper or a camera, to be able to try and share that essence that I've been experiencing back. So we are all one, and it's great to have that integration and to know that and to be able to live that. But thank you very much. So it looks like Lynn is there, huh?
There you are.
There we
Hi,
go. Hi, Lynn.
I've told you many times now that I wanted to be you when I grew up. And now with this wonderful talk, you put some dots together. You connected some dots for me. So I sort of understand a little bit about what makes you who you are. And I've got so much to work with now. Thank you. This talk has been absolutely wonderful. When you were talking about your experiences in church as a boy, and you were picking up something, but you were also seeing how people were acting. And then you said, there was something seeking true north in my life. And when you said that, I think a light bulb went off in my head. I saw myself in the same pews. But now I see myself that was there. And I really appreciate that. And I've told you also before that you're a gift to the universe. And now I know that from your Alan Watts quote, you are an aperture which the universe is looking and explaining itself. So I have deep gratitude for everything you said today, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much. Hey, Jersey girl.
Hi, Ed. Thank you so much. It was a beautiful talk and so rich in so many ways. I first got to know you a little bit on Hawaii at the retreat last year, where you were in a lot of pain with your knee, and I really remember how receptive you were to being helped, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Your fortitude in this, in your life, it's a long life you've lived, and is really, I really appreciate it. And you're not allowing your creative spirit to flounder while you did your life that you had to do when you had to do corporate thing. Is I really appreciate that too, and I appreciate you and our council, and I just appreciate you. So thank you for giving us this gift of the talk.
Thank you, and right back at you. I hold you very dear and appreciate you too, in many, many ways. And it looks like Bonnie's up next.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, Bonnie.
So I stayed back in Madison when all of my fellow travelers were on retreat with you recently in Hawaii, and we consciously held space for all of you. But I wanted to say thank you for today, for offering yourself so generously to us, and for bringing your mom forward in all the ways that she lived life fully and saw in her sons and gave to her sons. And there's a part of me that wants to place my hand on your back, wants to place my hand on your shoulders, wants to place my hands on your cheeks and say, breathe. It really, and also to share with you how how much I appreciated your walking us through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and beyond. As someone whose life was, well, let me say it differently. So in my life, I had some brown-skinned people whose lives I could only be this close to because there were many separations that were imposed upon both of us. And you're speaking to your home life and to your church life and to your thick glasses and skinny black body as a teenager. And, and the ways that you walked in the world and through the world are just deeply meaningful to me. So thank you very much.
Thank
Love
you
you
so
deeply.
much. Hi.
Like Bonnie, I'm from Apamata. I don't think we've met, but I've seen you a number of times. I'm very glad to meet you today. I was one of the folks also who stayed behind, but held all of you in Hawaii. So I feel like I know you. But what I want to thank you today, first of all, for speaking about your shyness, because I feel that myself, and it's so great to have permission to be that way. And in my shyness, lots of times I don't have much to say, and I don't have much to say here, except lately I've been thinking about how very small I am in the immensity of the cosmos, and even in a very comforting way. And I remember a long time ago when it was popular to think that humans were here so that we could help the universe be conscious of itself, something similar to the aperture. And I had kind of agreed to dismiss that it was unnecessary. And through seeing your talk today, seeing your image with that quote moved the needle for me, so that now there may be room for both, more, wide. And so I have to thank you from my heart for this teaching. It means a great deal to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's more than whatever I could ask for. Thank you deeply.
Mhm.
And Becky.
Hi, Ed. So good to be with you. You know that I'm from Open Door and that we really got to know each other in Hawaii this year. And I just kind of seen you online a couple times. But it's been one of the great gifts of this year to me. And we had a question that, Flint asked these questions. I think it was like, what's keeping you alive right now or something like that, like what's making you survive right now, and we were partnered up to answer that question together. And even though on a sheet our demographics are about polar opposite, we found a resonance and connection. And as you were speaking, similar to what other people have said, I felt like you were speaking directly to my life and teaching me about my life and inspiring my life. And that you being whatever you're channeling, that aperture to help us all see more clearly and see ourselves more clearly with love and compassion. And I feel immensely grateful for that, and that you step forward to share that with us. And for your tears and your tenderness, and showing how you can do this and be brave and scared and all those things and be full-hearted and not just lock it down and get through it, but to share all of yourself with us is such a gift. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Becky, and great to see you again. Touch my heart again, as always. Thank you. And that might be our time, huh?